Thank you all for joining the PocketLab Air webinar today. We're going to be looking at how you can use PocketLab Air to investigate things like climate change and do experiments around air quality and environmental science, and even some biology as well. I'm going to be presenting. Let's see, this is loading here. There we go. I'm going to be your main presenter. My name is Robbie Douthin. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Community Engagement here at PocketLab. And then joining us on chat support, you'll see him pop up and kind of answer some questions as well, is Clifton Rooseboom, our CEO and co-founder here at PocketLab. Our agenda really quick. We're gonna briefly talk about who we are at PocketLab and our mission, and then go over some basics about PocketLab Air, getting connected, using the PocketLab app, and then we're going to get into recording and reviewing data with PocketLab, and we're going to do that through two quick activities that we'll do together. We're going to talk a little bit about sensor calibration before we get into some more advanced use cases where we look at how you can map PocketLab Air data that you collect with your geolocation, and then also briefly talking about memory mode. After that, we'll look at where you can find some PocketLab Air resources, some lesson plans, some experiment ideas, and getting started material on our website. So here at PocketLab, we believe we believe science and authentic data collection should be fun and engaging and accessible for all students. So we design our Pocket Labs to enable exploration and so that everyone can feel like they're a scientist when they have a Pocket Lab in their hands and they're going out and exploring the world around them. And specifically, Pocket Lab Air. With PocketLab Air, you can measure the following things. You can measure carbon dioxide, you can measure particulate matter, ozone, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, light intensity. So you can measure a whole host of different things with your PocketLab Air to go out and do these sort of climate, environmental science, air quality experiments. And PocketLab Air works by connecting via Bluetooth to computers, tablets, smartphones. So with Chromebooks, Macs, Windows 10 computers, and Android phones and tablets, you can actually connect to your PocketLab Air right in a web browser on a Chrome browser. So I'll show you how to do that in a second. And then if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you can connect through the PocketLab iOS app that you just download from the Apple App Store. So we're going to do, as we kind of learn more about PocketLab Air and kind of just see how to use all the different features, we're going to measure or do two quick activities. And these activities are also on our educators page that you can check out. One is how much carbon dioxide does a person produce, and then the other is kind of investigating what are the health effects of particulate matter. So those are the two things. We're going to learn the basics of PocketLab Air, doing those two quick activities about CO2 and particulate matter. So we're going to start by connecting our PocketLab Air to the PocketLab web app. Right now I'm using a Windows 10 computer to connect or to do this webinar. So I'm going to use the Windows 10 device to connect to my PocketLab in the PocketLab web app. So I'm going to share my screen and you can see how that works. If you have a Chromebook, a Mac, an Android, it works very similar. If you have an iPad or iPhone, it works similar as well. You just download that app from the App Store. So I'm going to share my screen. So this will just take 1 second here. Okay, so you should now see our website at thepocketlab.com. I've opened a Google Chrome browser, and I'm at our website. And so to get to our PocketLab app, you can either click on this button App, which will launch it, or you can just type in the URL directly, which is thepocketlab.com/app. Excuse me. And you're going to be brought to a connection screen. Where you'll see some different options. One is to connect to your PocketLab. One thing you don't see on my screen because of the way the screen sharing works is a prompt that will pop up that asks for the web app to access your location data. You can either click deny or you can click allow. If you click allow, you're going to be able to do some of the mapping features that you can, where you can map PocketLab Air data with your geolocation. So we recommend clicking allow. That's what we use it for, just to map for you to get latitude, longitude data along with your PocketLab Air data. If I click connect to PocketLab, a connection screen opens up. Again, you can't see this on your screen, but then I turn my PocketLab on. I already had it on. So I turn my PocketLab on, and it's going to flash red and green. And then I click on my PocketLab Air, which again you can't see, that's in a connection window. But I click on PocketLab Air and click pair, and now it's pairing with the app. And so immediately you start to see the PocketLab Air is streaming some data to our app. So you see particulate matter data, ozone data, carbon dioxide. We also have an air quality index graph that we calculate based on our PM data. There's some measurement conditions in the bottom left-hand corner, which is temperature, humidity, pressure, and light intensity. And then in the lower right-hand corner, if you allowed for the location data to be used by the PocketLab app, you will get the nearest publicly available air quality data. So in this case, we're pulling in air quality data from an EPA station in San Jose, which is near our location here at the PocketLab offices. So one thing you'll notice with PocketLab is as soon as you connect it, you're already streaming the data right away. And this is because we want you to start exploring with PocketLab, start just kind of trying different things with it and seeing how the data changes. You don't have to set up a really elaborate experiment to get started. You just connect and start seeing the data and just start exploring and playing around with it. So one thing that I'm just going to kind of try is what happens if I breathe on the PocketLab. What is that going to do to the graphs that I'm looking at? So if I breathe on the PocketLab Air, what changes? Well, I looked at particulate matter, doesn't really change. Ozone doesn't really change. But if I look at CO2, the carbon dioxide right here, you see that's changing significantly because there's carbon dioxide in my breath as I exhale. So our PocketLab Air is actually measuring that. I also down here, if I looked at the humidity percent is also going up because there's water vapor in my breath as I breathed on the PocketLab Air. So, because we're just streaming the data, you can kind of just play around with it and start to explore some different things. Maybe that'll give you some ideas for some experiments that you can try. So as we start to kind of investigate kind of the basics of the app, we're going to do an experiment around carbon dioxide and around the carbon dioxide that you can measure in your breath. So on our educators page, there is a lesson where you can use the PocketLab Air and the CO2 sensor to try and figure out how much carbon dioxide do you produce every day? And how does that help you understand more about carbon dioxide? You can compare that to how much CO2 a car produces or an airplane produces every day. And that will, in that investigation, you kind of learn more about CO2 and greenhouse gases and how that how climate change is impacted by that. So for that activity, we're going to kind of do it briefly here. You're going to need something like a container where you know the volume of it. So this the container here is 15 liters, and I just put the PocketLab air inside of that, and then I'm going to take I'm going to seal the container. And then the kind of basics of the experiment is I breathe into the container and seal it, and then measure the change in CO2. And I can use that in the lesson. It goes into more detail. You can use that data to calculate how much how much CO2 you are producing on average every day. So now to do this, to start this experiment, I'm going to want to actually record this data. So all this data here has just been streaming. If I go down to where it says record, I'm going to click on the record button. And now that clears the data that's been streaming and starts a data recording for this trial. So I'm going to start to see the graphs start to record data. And I'm just going to, my PocketLab air is in there. You can see it. I'm going to open this up. Breathe into it, and then seal it. And you can start to see in my CO2 graph that it's starting to spike way up there. And so this activity, again, on the educators page, there's you can do some calculations to help you figure out exactly how much CO2 is in that container that you've just that you produce with that breath. Another activity on our educators page is looking at particulate matter, and there's a couple activities there. One is around looking at forest fires, and even thinking about how you could build early forest fire detection sensors. And then the other activities around the health effects of particulate matter. So to do that, you similar to the other activity, you put your PocketLab in a container, and then you get just a match and a candle, and you light the candle and put it inside the container. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of do that now. As I do that, I'm opening up the I just opened the container with the PocketLab air inside. So you're going to see the CO2 is probably going to start to go back down as that as it's no longer sealed there. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, I'll try it again. Broke my mesh. So I just light the candle. Try not to start a fire. And then I put the candle, we'll try that again, just went out. I'm going to try not to talk while I move the candle, because I think that's how I blew it out. Okay, so now you can see the candle is in the container, and you can see the particulate matter is already starting to go up. But if I blow out the candle and now seal the container with the PocketLab air inside, you can see the PM data in the upper left-hand corner is really starting to increase. And so you can use this kind of just, this is just a simple example of how how you can measure particulates, small particles with the PocketLab air sensor, and then you can use that to understand more about forest fires and or how particulates affect your health, things like that. So we're recording this data. We did the CO2 experiment. We did the particulate matter experiment. It's still kind of going up there. I can I'll open up the container. It might just start. That might change a little bit. I can go down here to where it says stop, and I can now click stop. And now I have a recording of the trial that I just did. And so in the upper left corner, I can see where I blew the candle out and where that spiked the PM data. And then over here, I can see where I breathed into the box and it measured the CO2. One feature you can do while you're reviewing your data is do some basic data analysis of your data. And so the way you can do that is if you see something in your data that is interesting to you, that you think is important for the investigation that you're looking at, you can click and highlight on a section, and then you'll zoom into that part of the data. So you just see me zoomed in. And let's say I want to know what was the average particulate matter data after I blew out the candle. So I zoomed in on that section of the graph, and I can go down here to where it says data analysis. And if I click on that, you can see a whole host of data analysis for all the different graphs. So it'll give you the mean and standard deviation and things of the data that you're looking at. So you can do some more advanced data analysis there. So here is particulate matter data, and you can see the average PM for PM 10, 2.5, and 1 for that section of the graph that I'm looking at. So again, that's that data analysis button down at the bottom. To zoom back out and look at the whole graph, I just double click anywhere and I zoom out and see that whole thing. Okay, so that's just a couple quick activities to get down the basics of recording and reviewing data and some of the types of activities you can do with your PocketLab Air. A couple quick things about sensor calibration. There is a 24-hour calibration procedure that you can do where you just keep your PocketLab on and connected, or you just have to keep your PocketLab on for 24 hours, and some of the sensors will do some auto calibration. So there is some resources on how to do that on our educators page. And then also there are some field calibration procedures that you can do as well. The carbon dioxide one is available now in the app. So there on each of the graphs, I'll just show you quickly how to do this. There is 3 little lines, sort of more options for that graph. If I click on that on CO2, you can see there's a calibrate button. And what that does is it sets the calibration, or it sets the CO2 levels to about 400 parts per million, which is the average CO2 levels in Earth's atmosphere. So you can take your PocketLab air sensor outside, leave it out in fresh air for a while, let the graph settle, and then you click calibrate, and that's a way to calibrate your CO2 sensor. And those some of those procedures are on our educators page. More procedures for field calibrations for the ozone sensor and the particulate matter sensor are coming soon and being released soon. So those will be available as well. A couple just quick notes about the ozone sensor. It does take a while to settle, and then there is an offset that you can calibrate when that calibration procedure is released. Those are kind of the basics there of PocketLab. I want to briefly get into some more advanced features before I take questions. One thing that I think is a really cool feature of PocketLab is the ability to get geolocation data with the data that you're collecting with your PocketLab sensor. And so you can go out and you can take your PocketLab out with your phone and walk around your neighborhood and collect PocketLab Air data, and then go back and download that data and map it using different mapping software and see where the data may have changed based on where you were in your neighborhood. So how do you do that? Well, there's a couple things right now in the app, in the web app. If you've allowed for the location data, there is you can actually see some of the mapping features right here in the graph or in the app in real time. So if I click on that More Options button for the graph for each of these graphs, there is right now we're looking at a graph, but you can change that to map. So if I change that to map, you'll see it starts to show the data with your location. If you were to walk around, right now this is on a computer, so I can't pick it up and walk around with me, but if I had this on my phone, as I walk around, you could see that data change if I was on an Android phone or something. And if you were to record data and then export the data as a CSV file, you get latitude, longitude data in the CSV file, so you can then do some more interesting visualizations with the data using that CSV file. So I'll kind of show you briefly how to do that. So let's say, and I actually did this. I did this with my iPhone earlier, so that you can see an example of it. But let's say I recorded data, and I went around and I walked around the neighborhood around our PocketLab offices. And I did this the other day when there was some construction going on. So we'll see that data in a second. So I walked around the PocketLab, I walked around the neighborhood, and then I stop recording. And then in the bottom right corner is an export button. And I can click export, and when I do that, I will save a CSV file of the data. And so I did this earlier, where I went around and I recorded data and I exported as a CSV file. And I'm going to show you a fun way to map that data with another program called CodeApp. So we are working on some more mapping visualization tools in some of our apps. But right now, a cool place that you can do some interesting things with your CSV file of the data is this this tool called CodeApp, which I'll have the links at the end in the resources page. So I'll kind of show you just quickly how to import a CSV into CodeApp and how to do some mapping with that. So if I click on Try CodeApp, I get put into this sort of sandbox where I can do some different interesting data analysis here. So I'm going to click Create New Document, and this is CodeApp is like it's a data analysis sort of tool application. I'm going to, you can't see this, it's off screen, but I'm just going to take the CSV of PocketLab Air data that I collected the other day, and I just drag it into this the area in the application. And you can see that my data has latitude data and longitude data. And then I have my particulate matter PM2.5 data that I collected, and also some ozone data. And in this CodeApp application, all you have to do, as long as you have latitude and longitude data in your CSV file, which you would from your data recording, you just click Map. And once you do that, it maps out your data here. So this was our PocketLab offices here, and then you can see where I walked around. Now, like I said earlier, there's some construction going on at the PocketLab offices, so around on that street. So there were two different places where there was some pavers paving over some asphalt on our street. So I'm going to pull in the particulate matter data, and you can start to see maybe where the location of those two pavers were. So what I do is I go over here to PM 2.5 data here, and I just can click on that and drag it onto the map. And you can see that it creates a little heat map of the different places, or of the values of the particulate matter data. So the lighter green here is where the PM 2.5 was 5 to 8, and then up here where it's a little darker, you see it spikes up to 12 to 17. So you can see where the two paver, where the street was being paved. One was right over here, right outside of our offices here. So I walked out, the PM data was going up. And then I started walking down the street, and you can see over here is kind of where the other paver was. It was actually in this area, and as I was walking towards it, I was upwind from it, so I wasn't getting any of the data because the wind was blowing the particles down the street further. You can see right when I walked, the vehicle was here. Right when I walked around it, the data started spiking up over in this area. So that was just a quick experiment that I did, and then downloading the CSV file, I put it into this this tool Code app to do some interesting data visualizations. Because you get the CSV file for it, you can put it into all kinds of mapping applications and tools. And again, we're building some out that will be available on our apps as well. And then the last thing I want to show quickly is just how memory mode works. And I'm just going to show just briefly where to go for it, and then there's some more resources that you can find on our educators page as well. So if you want to record, PocketLab can record data without this connection to an app, without a Bluetooth connection. And the way you want to set that up is, instead of clicking connect to PocketLab here, there's a button that says access memory mode. If you click on that, you'll connect to your PocketLab and do some set up the data rates and what sensors you want to record, and then you can go ahead and start recording to memory. When you're done recording, you go back, you connect to your PocketLab, and then you can upload the data from your PocketLab into the app, and then do all the same data analysis and review features that you can do in the app. So those are the basics of, or some basic features and some more advanced features of PocketLab Air. I want to briefly show you where you can find some resources, some of the activities that we saw, and some more getting started material. If you go to our PocketLab website, there is at the top, you'll see there's a page that we have for PocketLab Air. If you click on that, you will get all kinds of articles about environmental issues, about climate change, air quality. You'll also see some getting started materials, and then you'll also see lesson plans and activities that you can do with your PocketLab Air, and we're continuing to add to that library and build out more of them. Here's an interesting one on cellular respiration, which we didn't get to really today, but for those that want to do some more biology stuff with the CO2 sensor, this activity looks at the cellular respiration of yeast. So you can, again, you put the PocketLab Air in a container, and you can measure the cellular respiration of yeast. So that's a great activity to check out. That activity where I lit the candle and put it in the container, that is part of a larger lesson plan around building sensors for forest fires, and having students kind of model how they can build some things with that, and looking at issues in forest fires. So that lesson as well. And there's also around the health effects of particulate matter, and you can do things with aerosols for that. And And then finally, there's a resources page. So if you up here at the top of our website, there's a section that says resources. If you click on resources, there's some options to check out. The very top one is PocketLab Air. There's another 15-minute or so webinar style video about PocketLab Air that dives into some of the stuff in a little more details. And then also you can read about how to do sensor calibration, how to set up memory mode, and some more of the advanced features all there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here now. So I encourage everybody to go to our PocketLab website at thepocketlab.com. Check out the PocketLab page for all these activities, for more resources, and then if you want to do some of the mapping features and you're looking for an application where you can do some interesting visualizations of the data, this Code app is a free mapping and data analysis tool that you can use as we continue to build out some of our mapping features. And that's the website is listed there as well. And then if you haven't done so, follow us on social media, because we often share a lot of really interesting use cases and experiment ideas from all of our wonderful users. With that, I will go ahead and answer any questions that people have. So you can, Cliff may have been recording, or may have answered them already in the chat, but we can, Cliff and I can answer more together. So we'll take as much time as we need to answer everybody's questions. If you want to sign off, thanks so much for joining us. And if you're interested in hearing some of the questions, go ahead and stay on for a little while. Okay. Any questions, Cliff?
So there's questions about memory mode,
yes,
which I think you covered, and there's a comment about using PocketLab Air in a weather balloon, which is a great idea, and we have, I guess, talk about PocketLab Weather has been used in balloons.
Yeah, so we have another sensor, PocketLab Weather. It's actually, we're doing like a fun experiment with it in the background, building some, what did we, building the
thermos.
Yeah, doing some thermos experiments. So that PocketLab Weather, you can kind of see it. It's right there. But that is it's in one of our other sensors. It does just the weather functions of PocketLab Air, so temperature, barometric pressure, light intensity, humidity, and that we've had that out for a couple years now. We've had a lot of users put that up in weather balloons and do they can set the memory to record the memory, put it at a low data rate so it doesn't fill up the memory, the onboard memory the onboard memory doesn't fill it up, and then they send it out in a weather balloon and go back and collect the data, and you can see just as the atmospheric you can see like a lot of changes in the data there, from humidity to pressure and stuff like that. So it'd be really interesting to see that with the PocketLab Air, because you'd get all kinds of changes in ozone and things like that. So again, you can you can do that. I would say the only thing to think about is as it gets, if it's a really high altitude balloon and it gets really cold, the battery, it may affect the battery. So if you have it inside of a container, or if you're use it, like if you have a payload where there's other like GoPros or things like that people put in their high altitude balloons, if you have if those are going to work fine, then the PocketLab Air will work fine. Yeah.
So there's a question about calibrating the CO2, and we did show the function in the web app, but it's under the graph menu button. If you just want to show it again.
I will,
and maybe say if anybody has issues, specific support issues.
Yeah. So
be in contact.
Yeah. So there is a there is if you look at the CO2 graph, there are 3 little lines in the upper right-hand corner of the graph. If you click on that, there's a calibrate button. So you click calibrate, and oh, I see. And then what happens? So I didn't really explain that. So then what happens is the graph will reset itself wherever it's at that moment. Once you hit calibrate, it resets itself to 400 parts per million, which is about the average CO2 levels in Earth's atmosphere. So to calibrate it, you're going to need to go outside, allow for the PocketLab to settle in fresh air, to settle outside. Don't get too close to it, because as you breathe near it, it's going to change the CO2 levels. So make sure it's sort of measuring ambient conditions outside in fresh air, and then click calibrate, and so that will calibrate it to 400 parts per million, and then it'll stay that way. So you can do that on the web app, and then you can connect it to your iPhone, and that calibration will persist. Other questions? Yeah, so the map. So a couple questions about the map. In the PocketLab web app, that map in the lower right-hand corner is pulling in data from the nearest EPA station. For example, it's publicly available air quality data, and that map will appear when you log on, when you start the web app. The first time you start it, it will ask for your location data. If you click allow, then that map should appear. It's pulling your location from Google Chrome. So if there's something that's blocking your location, either through your internet connection or through Chrome itself, then you won't see that data. But if you click allow and Chrome is able to get your location, then that location will appear. And then if you've done that, what I also showed was if you click those 3 little lines in the graph, you can switch from a display of a graph to a display of a map in the web app, so you can see a map of the data with your geolocation as well. But you have to click allow on that. And if you accidentally click deny, if you denied your location and you want to go back and allow it, you can either open an incognito browser, or you can just clear your cache, your browsing cache or something, and that will pop it back up. So if you have more questions about that, you can email me at support@thepocketlab.com, and I'll help with that. And then about the iOS app and mapping with that. Right now, you don't see the map in the iOS interface. There is an update. We just released an update to iOS about a week ago, and then in our next update, working on actually so you can see the mapping interface in real time. However, the iOS app does now, in the most recent update, record your geolocation to a CSV file. So while you don't see it in real time, in the app itself, it is recording that data. So if you export it as a CSV, you will get the latitude and longitude data, and then you could use something like CodeApp to map it after you do the recording. So that's actually what I did in that example. I was using my iPhone when I did it, and I just downloaded the CSV file and got the latitude and longitude data. Again, look for that those more real-time mapping features coming soon, but this in the CSV file should be latitude and longitude data, both on the iOS app and on the web app. So if you have an Android, you can connect to the web app and walk around your neighborhood. If you have an iOS device, if you have an iPhone, you can use the iOS app, walk around your neighborhood, get the CSV, and do some really cool mapping features with that.
All right.
Any other questions?
We're good. If you have any other questions, email us.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining. We really, really appreciate everybody being here and supporting PocketLab Air. All right, all the way from New Zealand. So thank you for joining us from the other side of the world. And we early morning. So we and Barcelona. Wow, we have people all over the place. So you know, we're really excited about that. We're really excited about some of the once we get up and running with some other features of PocketLab, being able to share PocketLab air quality data from Barcelona to New Zealand to San Jose. So we really appreciate everybody here. Email us if you have any other questions. Thanks so much.